afternoon. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you.
So excited that you're on. And
I'm excited.
I, yes, yeah, that was a nervous laugh. I hope you're not too nervous. Maybe a little nervous. I feel like a little nervous energy is good.
I'll get my
Um,
nervous giggles out now.
yeah, it's perfect. I had a guest on who, like, we laughed for like the first 10 minutes, and I couldn't tell if she was nervous or we were just having that good a time. But either way, I'm sure we'll have a similar thing, and it'll be a lot of fun today. So let's get right into it. First things first, love if you'd introduce yourself to the audience, where you are in the world, and yeah, share what you'd like to kick us off.
Sure. So my name is Arielle Sadan. I am a leadership development coach here in New York. From New York, families from Israel, and have spent my life mostly here in the city, around the
Hmm.
city. I've traveled a lot, so it's something that I'm really passionate about. And yeah, I'm I'm excited to be here and see what else you managed to bring out of me talking to cool people.
Yes, well, that is my specialty. So we'll see if well, you'll either be laughing or crying by the end. I'm not sure. We'll see.
A little bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. It's perfect. So thanks for sharing that. And as we always do, I just like to talk about how we met. So Ariel and I have only met once, and we have a mutual um, friend slash your business partner, Jake, who has also been on the show. And so I'm actually really excited about this interview because I don't really know that much about you. Really nothing at all other than you're great to spend time with, and any friend of Jake's is a friend of mine. But other than that, like everything that the audience is going to be learning today, I'm learning as well. The only thing I really knew is that you're from New York, and that's about it. So,
It's a good
and
place to start.
it's a good place to start. So I'm super excited about this as well, and grateful that you are taking the time. So have a tradition on the show where my guests and we tell each other our first impressions of each other, and we have definitely never talked about this before. And because it's my show and I make the rules, I would like for you to go first. So, if you remember, what is your first impression of me?
Ooh, well, I think the first impression I had of you was that you seemed like a very, for lack of a better term, like burly teddy bear because and
I'll
there's
tell you why
good
I'm laughing in
reason.
a minute. No, I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a minute. Keep going.
Well, like you came up to meet me at the space that Jake and I work at and introduced yourself, and you're a tall built kind of person, and I don't know if you were smiling or not in the beginning, but you give off like a very serious, solid vibe. But then the minute you open your mouth, you're actually like this very fun, funny personality. So
Oh man, it's so good. Thank you.
yeah, that was my first
Um,
impression.
I love it. No, I love that. I because a couple of reasons. One, I have my friend Shanae, who's known me for over 20 years. She calls me a scone, like crusty on the outside, but like once you like get anywhere with it, it's like delicious and soft on the inside. I'm actually like not even like I don't even consider myself serious ever. Like I'm my greatest commitment in life is the fun. But I have people tell me all the time, they're like, oh, you had a serious look on your face. And I think it's because I'm just not very emotive. I'm just like
Mm,
I'm not somebody who emotes a lot. Like I emote fun, and I think I emote like smiles. But when I'm like, not that I'm being serious, but if I'm not like smiling, then I'm just kind of like stoic.
that makes
And
sense.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard that you're not the first person to tell me this. So thank you. I'm laughing because it's always funny to hear like how you show up to other people in the world, especially they don't really know you. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. So my first impression of you, we talked about how we met in person was you have a really welcoming presence, and word I'm looking for, like you used to do. I know you used to do consulting work, so you're kind of one of those people that it's like this woman knows her stuff and is also really cool. And I think we both worked in the corporate world for a long time as well, where it's like, hey, this is a credible person who's also like a lovely human being that I want to get to know. And I think sometimes, and I've talked about this with a couple of my other guests on here who have done like management consulting and things, like it didn't feel like you had a facade on. And I think it's probably because now you're doing more like human work than the kind of work you used to do. But yeah, like it was immediately, I immediately felt comfortable with you. And then as the workshop, we got to spend time together. I was a guest, and you were doing the workshop. I was like, oh yeah, like my initial impression of you was like definitely enhanced as we spent time together. Like sometimes you're like, oh yeah, and then as you actually see people in action, you're like, oh no. It was like, oh yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, even more yeah. Which is why I invited you to come on the show today. I wouldn't invite you. This is only for cool people, as we talked about. So
Well, it has been
you you
my
you passed the
life's
test.
goal. It's been my life's goal since middle school to be cool. So I'm glad I finally made the cut.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we still have an hour of this conversation, so maybe by the end, well, I'll tell you by the end if you actually made the cut or
Oh, okay. No pressure.
not. Yeah, so let's get into it. So speaking of cool, what is something that you nerd out about?
So many things. So many things. Well, I will be the first to be that cliched person that says I nerd out about my job. But it's really true. I love reading books about positive psychology and ways that people can make their lives better, even in really incremental ways. Um, so I'm reading The Happiness Advantage now by Sean Aker, which is really, really
Mm,
interesting. Um, and trying to integrate some of his learnings about increasing positive thoughts. So that's, one area of my life that I spend a lot of time on, both in the office and out. Um,
mhm.
Also, I've been an avid Grey's Anatomy fan for the last 15 seasons. Only only a little bit ashamed to admit that. Um,
Why would they be
but
shame around that? It's a popular show.
it is a popular show, and I've been watching it since middle school. So I'm a
Oh, you're outing your age. You're
dedicated
outing your
fan.
age now.
I'm
Yeah,
okay with it. I own it. I'm actually I'm turning 30 this year, so I'm happy to out that as well. So it's
nice.
a big stepping stone and one that I'm pretty proud of making. So those are two of the big things I think. Yeah, I'm a big television geek. I like to be in touch with what's on and what's new and what's good. And I'm a loyal fan, even to the shows that have passed their peak. Not Grey's Anatomy. That's still great.
You're like, that's never gonna pass its peak. What
No, never.
any recommendations on new shows that you've seen recently that you think either myself or the audience would enjoy?
Well, it's not necessarily new, but Fleabag on Amazon Prime is
Mm.
excellent. I just finished up the second season this week, and it's riveting and funny and sad and all of the laughing crying together moments, and the awkwardness, and the reality of it just rips your heart to shreds. So highly
Yeah.
recommended.
I have, yeah. There's 2 shows, so I'm a big TV person. I'm a TV snob. I really only
Uh,
watch things that are, like, critically acclaimed, which is my wife
that's where
drives my
we
wife's crazy.
differ.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and my wife differs from me in that too, so good thing we have 2 TVs in the house, but there's 2 shows that everybody's like, "You have to watch." Fleabag and Succession, and I haven't seen either of them
Mm,
yet, and I'm really excited to start watching Fleabag, and I know the joke they made that she made, what's her Rachel, what's it, Waller, whatever, Phoebe Waller, whatever her name is.
yeah,
The
Phoebe Waller.
joke that she made about Obama, and then I looked up what that meant. I was like, I'm dying right now. This is unbelievable. I
She's
don't know if you know what I'm
so
talking about.
smart. She's so
Yeah,
smart.
so smart. So smart. So that's on the short term list, and that's actually a show that my wife and I would definitely watch together. We love watching Maisel. We watch Billions. So I feel like Succession and Fleabag are 2 more shows we can actually watch together. Because when she's like, "Yeah, I just want to relax and work in front of the television," it's not generally anything I want to watch. Let's put it this way: it's usually on Bravo.
I mean, I understand. I've been there and I'm often there myself, so I commiserate.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, that's great. I'm gonna go do something else, which is totally cool. So so Grey's Anatomy and positive psychology. Those are 2 cool things to nerd out about, definitely. And both enhance life enhancing in certain ways, yes. And you're
In
relaxing and you're
different
also
ways.
in different ways. Yeah, exactly. It's awesome. Cool. So next question for you is around your comfort zone. And the first question is, what is something that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's? And
I
no fair
think
saying watching Bravo. That's outside my comfort zone.
Um, I think two things come to my mind, and I think they're really interrelated. So one is I'm really comfortable at talking sort of off the cuff, unprepared, and I know that we've sort of touched on it um, at the workshop that you came to, but being able to present or talk to people and just be very open and genuine and also sound competent. That's something that I think I feel very comfortable with. I feel I
Hmm.
really own myself and my knowledge, and so that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, but
Hmm.
I feel very comfortable. um, and in the same vein, I would say I'm very, very comfortable at laughing at myself,
Yeah.
constantly making jokes at my own expense,
Yeah.
laughing about my weaknesses, even my strengths. I think it's healthy to laugh, and it's healthy to acknowledge the things that you're maybe not so good at, maybe the things that you are, not take yourself too seriously. So um, I do that frequently.
Yeah.
um, so those are the two things I think.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm a lover of people, like a complete extrovert. There's two types of people that I have a hard time being around. One, people that are just serious all the time because I'm so not serious. And it's nothing wrong with being serious when it's time to get serious, but the whole like everything feels like this high stakes thing and every decision is like the end of the world. I have a very hard time being around people like that. And the other kind of person that's challenging for me is somebody who's just always complaining and whining about something else that's like outside of them, like their
Yeah.
boss or the subway, or and as fellow coaches, like talk about like being at cause for your life. It's like you just gave me a list of 10 things that you're pissed off about, and like none of them you control. So why are you worrying about it? And go figure out how you can like create what you want, and being at cause for what you want to create. So yeah, like I love even in the workshop. I think there was like you guys had a moment that was like it's like watching like comedy where people are like, oh, that joke didn't really land, haha. Like next, it's like so endearing for people to just be themselves, and that's not what you guys did in the workshop that I remember. But yeah, I think that's great. Just be able to laugh at yourself, like, hey, like it's not the end of the world. Life doesn't end, and we're just all here trying to figure it out together and like laughing at yourself. I think that's cool.
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. So now the reverse. What's something that's outside your comfort zone? It's likely inside of somebody else's.
I feel like there are a lot of things, I always struggle with you don't know what you don't know. So I am sure that there are so many things that other people feel very comfortable about that I haven't even thought of. Um, but if I try to come up with, one or two things, let's just start with one actually. Um, I think one thing that I'm uncomfortable with that other people are,
Hmm.
it's probably, and this might sound kind of funny, but being a good wingman.
Mm.
And I am a horrible wing person, um, because I get very awkward even when I'm trying to fight for somebody else, and support somebody else. Um, and I think it shows up, in other facets of life. Advocating for others is something that I generally feel very comfortable with. But when it
Hmm.
comes to actually trying to, set people up or, introduce two people at a bar to see where it goes, that's something that I am so awkward and horrible at that other people I think feel really comfortable with. It's easier for most people to get dates for their friends than it is for them to get dates for themselves. For
Totally.
me, both are really, really hard.
Wait, you're saying it's hard for you to get a date for yourself and for others?
Yeah, well, that's like a whole nother story. But
Oh, we've got another 50 minutes. Like, let's just go right there. That sounds amazing. I didn't tell you that this whole show is going to be about your dating life.
I mean, I'm whatever help
Surprise.
I can get, I'll take it.
Well, at the end of the episode, you do get a chance to tell people how they can connect with you. And I don't specify in what manner. So you are welcome to share how they can find you. That's so funny. Like, I'm just trying to think for a minute. Because, like, for me, that's so natural. Like, how would it be awkward to set up two other people? Like, I can't even, Like, what would that even look like?
Well, let's say you're at a bar with a friend and they see someone across the room that they're interested in. And this has happened to me so many times. I've tried wingmanning for my girlfriends, for my guy friends, and they see someone and I slowly try to sidle up next to them and hover outside the people that they're talking to and find a entrance into the conversation to be like, hey, my friend over there thinks you're pretty cute. How would you feel about talking to them? Well, most people would actually ask the question. I just hover awkwardly outside the group like a sad puppy.
Are you
So,
jealous
um, in general or in this particular situation?
in this situation? Are you like jealous that they're not wanting to talk to you? Like, this like strikes me as something that would be on Fleabag, and I've never even seen Fleabag. It seems like a funny like a girls episode or something. It's just, this is amazing.
Yeah, well, weirdly, Lena Dunham, even in all her eccentricities and awkwardness, is probably less awkward than I am in this particular situation.
Oh my god,
um,
this is
I, it's not jealousy. It's mostly just, I think I get that, middle school feeling of being outside and not really knowing how to approach. In so many ways, I feel really confident, but for some
yeah.
reason, approaching a group of, people at a bar just feels very intimidating to me.
Okay. Well,
Don't know why.
yeah, no, that this is like I said, I'm going to learn a lot about you today. This is awesome. So, um, what if people set you up? Are you awkward when somebody's like, "Hey, this person's interested in you. Um, would you like to go out with them?" Are you awkward in that situation when it's for you?
No, never,
Got then you're like
which
then
is
you're
so
like
funny.
calm, cool, and collected. You're like, "Bring it on. That sounds great."
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so interesting because I feel like for most people it's the opposite.
Yeah. So maybe that's one of the things that's outside my comfort zone.
I could
Oh,
see
this is
that.
the thing. This is the thing that's outside my comfort zone.
It's well, thank you. I just want to see this play out in like an actual real life thing. I just think would be so. I would probably be making fun of you. I'm just going to be totally honest with you. I would be
You
giving
wouldn't be
you.
the first.
Yeah, I would be like, I'd be like, oh, now I get it. This is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's just
All
not
right.
put it on candid camera.
Yeah, we'll put it on candid camera, and we'll move on from this because got a lot of other things to talk about, and I could spend all the rest of our time talking about this. Even I'm sure you'd be very
God.
uncomfortable. Yeah, like no, this is actually a dating show. Surprise!
Oh
And
boy.
actually, I've got somebody to set you up with on the other line right now. Click.
Great.
Yeah, here we go. He's actually hung up now because you scared him away with that story.
Oh man. That happens all the
Anyway,
time.
yeah, that's all right. Someday.
Someday.
Uh, yeah. So next question for you. You had mentioned earlier that you like to get up and be in front of a room and do workshops. You knew that you're like a very confident speaker. So, what if I was able to give you 5 minutes to deliver a speech to the world? What would you give your speech on and why?
5 minutes is a very short amount of time. um, in the past, I think I probably would have said that I would talk about why finding like your career passion is overrated and how finding a career that you're excited about or good at is probably, better use of people's time and energy.
Hmm.
But now I think I would probably talk. It's interesting. I'm not a super activist kind of person, but I think given
Hmm.
the current climate that we're in, I would probably give a talk about, you know, the 5 things that we can do to save the environment or something like that. Something
Mm-hmm.
that, has more macro impact. Um, Generally, I feel like I'm adding the most value when I'm impacting, one person or a small team of people.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that, we're in a really interesting period of time right now with all of the um, the fires going on between California and Australia, which is so horrific. And I just happened to
Hmm.
have read an article about this morning, so it's on my mind. And I think that making individual impact is so important, but sometimes it's also important to zoom out and focus on the greater impact that we have and that we can have. And
Hmm.
so I think that if I could give a 5-minute speech to the world, it would probably be about, you know, the incremental ways that we can significantly contribute to the macro impact of the world.
Nice. I love that. Thank you. So this is the part of the show where you get to share with us whatever you'd like about your journey to today. And I don't mean it can be today, like the day we're recording this, but not necessarily, just like generally like what's brought you here today and what you're up to in the world.
Um, so I told you a little bit about where I'm from.
I actually had a
Um,
question. I actually had a question.
yeah,
You're a first generation American with both your parents are Israeli.
yes,
Got it. And you were born here
yes,
in the United States.
I was.
Nice.
Yes, the
Gotcha.
first person in my immediate family to be born here. So the only one who can run for president. I think I probably got my passport the fastest on a
Yes,
timeline of anybody in my family.
I'll bet. Yes.
So yes, first person in my family born here. My parents moved here in the 80s with my two older siblings. And so I think that's really where most of my journey starts is
Hmm.
growing up in an Israeli household in the suburbs of New York.
Hmm.
Um, I I think that really started my fascination with being multilingual and being multicultural and having exposure to different places and different people.
Hmm.
I always loved it when people in school would ask me, say something in Hebrew, and I
Yeah.
could say the most basic thing like, "אתה רוצה hamburger? Do you want a hamburger?" And they would, be over the moon
Yeah.
and super impressed. And it's really easy to impress 5-year-olds.
That's amazing.
But I think that really sparked this interest in, you know, something more expansive than where I grew up. And I was very fortunate to, be able to travel a lot in my life. I studied Spanish in Spain for 2 summers. I spent a summer in China studying Chinese. I went to business school in Israel and Barcelona.
Oh,
So,
cool.
and
What school did
throughout
you go to? What school did you
in
go to in Israel?
in
Israel.
Israel, I went to Tel Aviv University, and I
Hmm.
did my master's at the College School of Management. And I studied for a semester in Barcelona at a university called IESE Business School. Um, and it was just one of the most amazing experiences, my whole master's program of just being intensively exposed to people from so many different countries, backgrounds, experiences, people who grew up in one country, but their parents are from another country. And then
Yeah.
they went to school somewhere else and spoke 7 languages and danced tango. And um, it's just very um, enthralling, I think, all of it.
Hmm.
And that exposure has always been, part of what gets me excited about people,
Yeah.
learning more about them, figuring out what makes them tick, their intricacies, how different cultures communicate with each other, how they make people reflect on themselves. Um, Even today, I had a call with someone from Israel, and trying to coach someone from a very different country is
Hmm.
can be really challenging, especially when you don't know the intricacies. So I guess I have the benefit of knowing a little bit insider information about how they tick. So I find it really fascinating to try and break down those nuances.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I guess that's part of what also brought me to coaching was, you know, the love of figuring out what makes people tick
Hmm.
and how they can tick better and work with or work through the different cultural and family dynamics that sort of got them where they are to be
Hmm.
better versions of themselves.
Yeah. So, a couple things. I was fortunate enough to go to Tel Aviv in November of 2018. One of the coolest cities in the world, in my opinion. I stayed right on Rothschild, and we I was there for work, and we had a let's just say we had a very good time. It's a very easy place to go and stay out really late. Let's just leave it at that.
Yes.
As I'm
Yes.
sure you know that like every night we were there for 5 nights during the week, and every night it was packed. I'm like, who are these people? They're like, these are all like University of or Tel Aviv University students who are partying till 4 in the morning, along with all the people doing business there. So um, I loved Tel Aviv, and we got to go to Jerusalem, and then I went to the Dead Sea and went to Masada and all that. So Israel is an amazing country.
Yeah.
Um, so between finishing, so when you did your degrees, did you do them consecutively before going into the workforce?
No, so I did my undergrad at Tufts University outside of
Hmm.
Boston, and
Yep.
I studied English Lit, which was awesome. Definitely gave me an opportunity to fall even more madly in love with reading and with books and fiction.
Yeah.
And then I went to go work in financial services consulting,
Hmm.
which was a big departure from what I studied, but was really interesting and gave me an opportunity to work in some of the big New York banks, and get a lot of really good corporate exposure.
Hmm.
And then I went to work at an education startup here in New York, doing a lot of business development, um, client relations, things like that, and realized that I wanted to do something totally different, but I had no idea what. So I
Yeah.
did what most people in that position do, and I went to business school. Which was both very helpful and very not helpful, because what most people don't tell you about business school is that it doesn't really help you figure out what you really want to do.
What? So I didn't ever go to business school, but
That's
I have a
okay.
lot of yeah. Well, yeah. When I had a great career in corporate. But one of the things that strikes me about business school for some people, and maybe you can correct me, if you're in a career path that you don't need to have an MBA, it's actually a really good distraction for a couple of years. It's like a really good way to distract yourself from like, oh, I don't actually need to figure out for 2 more years what I'm actually going to do. Is that was that your experience at all?
Well, I think, it's a degree that can fit whatever purpose you need it to fill. So, for
Yeah.
people most often use it for some sort of either big leap on the corporate ladder, or they use it to pivot, geographically or
Hmm.
industry or function that they're in. So if let's say you're working in sales, in tech sales, but you want to work in HR, in medical devices, that's a pretty big leap. So business school is like a good story about how you pivoted. Um, but yes, it can also serve as a really good distraction. Um, but what generally ends up happening in my experience is that you go to business school, you learn a ton, you have a lot of fun more often than not,
Hmm.
because you create a great network and they're wonderful people and it's so diverse, and all of the great things about it.
Yeah.
um, but business school, and a lot of times, often like certain colleges, it's geared on getting you a job, probably a good job also, but
Yeah.
less geared on helping you figure out, like, is that the right job to set myself up for a career that I will really be fulfilled in? And for some people, it does it. They find something, they get in a path that they're really happy with. But for people who have a little bit less clarity, they end up taking a job, and then a
Hmm.
year or two in, realizing that it's not sustainable, or they're still not fulfilled, or they're not happy, and they need to do another pivot. And then it
Hmm.
becomes a little bit more challenging, to figure out what your next step is. That's sort
Yeah.
of
Got it.
where I ended up also.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then and you were mentioning you got into coaching. So that's what you're doing full time today, right?
Yes, yes. So I worked in
Awesome.
consulting out of business school, like most business school students, and I really loved it. I had a great experience. I got to travel a lot, meet amazing clients, work with really big companies, make a lot of impact, and also realized that my impact was more valuable in a different context. So I moved
Hmm.
into the coaching world, and
Nice.
I've been doing this full time for a while, and it's great.
Yeah.
Now I'm very
That's
fulfilled.
yeah. That's very cool. And you figure it out. You figured it out pretty early in your career too. Like for me, I've only we've been doing this full time around the same time period. and it took me 11 years longer than you to figure it out. So, and including like, I also didn't go to any sort of uh, program, like graduate program. So I like literally worked like the day I graduated college, I was in the workforce that next Monday. So yeah, and it wasn't that I hated my career or anything, but it wasn't my thing. So kudos to you for like taking the leap to just go after it, like, early on, and, like taking
Thank
the
you.
leap on that, because I think a lot of people get trapped in the money or this prestige, or like you probably heard this in coaching, like you should all over yourself, like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and you end up like, wait, how did I get here? And then you end up in your later in your career where you really can't. It's really hard to do anything else because you're kind of pigeonholed into one thing at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
regrets to you. Awesome. And so the other thing we talked about is you live in the tri-state area. You are, I believe, single based on what you said earlier. Is that true?
Yes. Yes, I
Seriously?
am.
It's like she
True.
got everybody listening. She is single.
Yes. Guide
Um,
folks out there. My
yeah.
mother would be very happy if this brought me some.
Do I get a finder's fee?
I'm sure we can arrange something with my mom.
Yes. She's like, honey, get on as many podcasts as possible because it's time.
She'll definitely cook you a meal if you make something happen. So
Oh, fantastic. I love it. Well, we'll make sure and make it very clear how to get a hold of you by the end of the episode.
that's not embarrassing at all.
No, not embarrassing at all. But embarrassing is a small thing compared to true love. So
That's
it's a
true.
small price
That's
to
very
pay.
true.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's a cool journey, and you've obviously done a lot of great stuff already. And I know you and Jake together as a team, and also you separately in your private practice are creating all sorts of amazing things for your clients that you work with. So thanks for sharing all that. And you're probably going to be excited about this next thing, where you get to ask me anything. So you get to pick on me for a little bit.
Oh boy.
So, yes, Arielle, what would you like to ask me that I can answer for the audience and for you?
You know, one of the things that I think would be really helpful for people who had very similar first impressions as I did
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is what's going through your head when you're not smiling or laughing?
Oh, this is great. I love this. Let me think about that. So a lot of the audience knows I was in sales and I sold technology. So I think part of this, what goes through my head, or the impression that I give off is a bit of a remnant from that world, because most, and this is not a stereotype, this is just the facts about my career. I mostly sold to men. And, there's always a dynamic between buyers and sellers, and, the whole prove to me, and it's like, who's the alpha male? So I think, and I'm working through this, but I think the first habit that I have, or my natural place to go, would be a, would be a, oh, that's a great question. So what is going through my mind when people get the first impression that I'm serious? Well, I'm definitely judging people. I'm a big assessor. Like, I have a very, like, I have this like detective part of my personality, or in coaching, call it your
Huh.
survival mechanism. I call it my cynical Sherlock Holmes. So I'm always like assessing. Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, and I don't think this isn't specific to you at all. But you know what I think it is? I don't like the way I look when I smile. I just realized that. So I think, because it doesn't feel natural at first to me, like your thing about not feeling natural about setting people up. Like for me, like I don't feel natural when I smile at first. And so I think what's subconsciously going through, and thank you, you're creating a breakthrough for me literally live on the show today. Good coaching, is that I'm self-conscious about smiling too early, so I don't. And it's also interesting because, in the coaching program that I just graduated from, people would be like, you're so lovable and like so fun. And it's like you sit in the room with a stoic look on your face. I'm like, yeah, because I'm just not an emoter. And for me to like be more expressive in my face, especially when I first meet people, would be super weird for me. Like it would not like you're talking about being authentic in front of a room. It'd be super weird for me to like. It would feel fake to me, so I don't do it. Now, could I grow into that? Yes, and I think you're inspiring me to perhaps to practice that a bit. But usually, what's going through my mind when I meet somebody, and I'm 42 now, so I've had some experience with this. Generally, now that I'm doing my own thing, my first impressions of people are almost always true, and they almost always exceed my expectations, which is really, really fun way to go through life because I don't think that a lot of people go through life like that. And I know I didn't used to either. So I think, and you're making me think about this. I've never had this question or pondered this. I think what's actually going through my mind is like, what do I think about this person? Not from like, I'm not like, it's not like a physical thing or like, am I going to like them? Are we going to become friends? Are they going to be on my podcast? Are they going to be a client? It's not like that. It's just more like, what's this interaction going to be like? Because so I have a friend, Marie, who was on the show on episode 5. And she's amazing. So we have this interesting context around people. Her context around people is people are punks, and therefore it's hard for me to connect with a lot of them. And we actually talked about this. I have a context around life is like people are punks, but I love them anyway. Like, because I'm, like it's like I have a high bar of like people showing up, being on time, being accountable, high integrity, all those things, and just context is like it's just challenging to show up like that as a human being. So all this long-winded answer to say what's actually going through my mind is I think what I'm actually thinking is I hope I like this person because it's for me to not like a person is rare. Like there are not many people that I'm like don't want to spend time with that person. And there's really only two types of people: people that are whiny all the time, and um, people that just take themselves too seriously, like we talked about. So yeah, I think that's what's going through my mind is I think I'm like calibrating, assessing, judging, and also like completely subconsciously just not emoting. And that's really all there is to it.
Hmm.
Nothing more than that I can come up with. Next time I next time I catch myself, I'm definitely gonna reach out to you and be like, "Oh, this is the other thing I'm doing." Because now you've created a new awareness for me. Nice positive psychology. Nice wizardry. Very good.
I mean, it's the first time someone's called me a wizard, but I will take it and embrace that.
Yeah. You can use that in one of your testimonials when you're working with clients. It's like, I've been called a wizard.
I love that. I'll do that. Endorse me on
You can,
LinkedIn.
yeah, I will endorse you for wizardry.
Just waiting
That's
for my
awesome.
Hogwarts invite to come through the mail. So
Exactly. She is one heck of a non-muggle.
yes, thank you.
You're a non-muggle. Awesome. Well, thank you for the really cool question. Because man, you could tell me I was like, whoa, like I've never thought about that.
I'm glad.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And now I'm going to rip the microphone back away from you, and it's back. Now I get to go back and ask you some more questions
I'm
because
ready.
that was super uncomfortable. Not really, but so Arielle, what are you passionate about?
Hmm. I am. Well, I feel like the first thing I want to say is that I'm passionate about my work. I'm passionate about my clients. I'm really passionate and excited, um, on top of both of those things, about the business that I'm building with Jake, who
Mm-hmm.
you've had on the show and who introduced us. And so our company, Revel&Awe, is about finding uh, wonder and finding direction and really embracing the journey towards those things. And I think that it's really exciting to be able to create programming and philosophy around those things because it's something we so often just forget to incorporate into our daily lives, into our lives at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the I guess that's something that really gets me excited and gets my creative juices flowing. That I'm really like juicily digging my hands into. Um, and I'm really passionate about traveling and and getting more exposure to the world,
Mm-hmm.
expanding my mind, and Yeah, spending time with my friends and my family. I have 5
Awesome.
nieces and nephews,
Oh,
so
nice.
I better be a very passionate aunt because they are great.
Yeah. Are they local here in the tri-state?
They're in New York for now,
Oh,
at least, thank
nice.
goodness, until they
Yeah, that's
start going
awesome.
off to college.
Yeah. How old are they?
The oldest is 11 and a half,
Mhm.
and the youngest is 10 months.
Oh, congratulations. That's
Yes,
awesome.
thank you. Yes,
Oh,
they're
that's
great.
so fun. Yeah, I think I have our daughter will be 4 this Sunday, February 2nd. So
It's
that's
an amazing age, and
it's a great
congratulations
age.
to her.
It's a great age most of the time. Most of the time, yes, she's awesome, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting age because you're like, and I don't know if you've seen this in your nieces at all, but where you start to see, you're like, oh, and as this parent, it's very, as a parent, this is so obvious where you're like, oh, there's my personality. Oh, there's my personality that isn't that great. Like my wife and I are both extremely competitive, and our daughter like hates losing. Like if we run on the sidewalk together and one of anybody beats her, she gets really pissed off. And I'm like, oh, so she's basically just like me. Like she does
Yeah.
not like losing. Um, so that's cool. That's awesome. So you have a lot of family and that you get to see quite often, which is really really nice.
I do. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, it's very cool. So, what's the thing that you're most proud of?
I I think that I'm most proud of the leap that I took, quite blindly, I may say, from corporate to building my own business. Um, I
Hmm.
left I leapt pretty far into that abyss without
Hmm.
having too much of a concrete plan, just knowing somewhere deep inside in some weird hidden recess inside myself and my soul that that was the right thing to do.
Hmm.
And most people thought I was crazy, and I did it anyway. And I think that that was like a real show of bravery and self trust that um, I feel both fortunate to have found, but also very proud to have found and created for myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of the uh, through lines on this show from everybody I talk to. And most everybody that I have on the show has taken some big risk in some way, whether it be business or whether it be moving to some place, or even if they're working in a corporation, like creating something on the side that's like that people are like, oh, that's silly or that's stupid. And I think the thing that everybody has in common, and I'll include myself with this, is like nobody regrets it. Like nobody's been like, I tried that thing I always wanted to do and I really regret it. Like nobody has said that. Everybody's like, it's the best thing I ever did. Whether or not it worked out, I learned a lot about myself, and I grew so much. So I applaud you. You and I are similar. Like both worked in corporate, and like and we're good at what we did, and we both decided to take that leap. And it's very scary, but it's cool to see somebody like you who's crushing it out there doing your thing, and living your purpose and doing it from a place like, the thing I'd say about you and Jake is you guys are obviously having a lot of fun together, which, man, how cool is it that you get to make money having fun and getting to create a difference in the world? Because my jobs in corporate were not always fun.
Yes. Yeah, we're really lucky, and it's definitely one of the things that we try to incorporate as much as possible because it's so easy to get bogged down in details and admin and stress and strain. But the ability to keep things fun and playful and exciting is definitely something we're pretty proud of.
Yeah, congratulations. Very cool. So I have a few more questions for you if you have a few more minutes to spend with myself and with the audience. Is that okay?
Awesome. Yeah.
Great. So, Ariel, what is something you're afraid might actually be true about you? And let's take it out of the dating realm because I think we've done a pretty good job of covering at least the whole like setup part of it. I think we've done a pretty good job of covering that off. So again, like what's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
Hmm. I hadn't even thought about taking it into the dating realm. But
Well, we can if you want. I mean, it's always
no,
interesting.
no, that's okay. Um, I think one of the things that I'm afraid might be true, and I think that this is something that is pretty human, um, is, and I really hope it doesn't come off as self-aggrandizing, but I'm afraid I'm actually really going to be successful.
Oh, wow, I
Um,
love that.
and I think it scares me because then I'll have to live into it every day and keep up that momentum. And right now, when my business is still small and growing, but
Mhm.
small, that's something that I can hedge a little bit. I can still, you know, almost complain about how small everything is and how stressful it is to grow the business. There's um, like a little personal Schadenfreude, like
Mhm.
there's joy in the complaining. But when
Yeah.
things start going really good, you don't really have that as much anymore. The complaints are still there; they're just about other things, and I think that um, I'll be very happy when that happens.
Mhm.
And um, there's something about it that terrifies me.
Yeah, so the second part of this question is what do you do to compensate for that fear?
I mean, I don't know that it's so much compensating for it, but I think I do try to push through it almost, or at least take it along with me. I'm very lucky that I work with another coach very closely, so
Mhm.
we talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that it's not something that uh, ever really goes away for people who
Mhm.
have this kind of fear. Um, but you can learn to, you know, get a different kind of bag for it that's more comfortable. Like a two-strap backpack instead of a crossbody messenger bag,
Yeah.
um, so that at least you're carrying it in a more balanced kind of way. Um, and I think that recognizing it and realizing that it's not the enemy, fear isn't the enemy here.
Mhm.
That's also something that really helps to quiet the fear a little bit.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You probably know more about this than me from like reading about positive psychology and stuff, but we did talk about this a little bit in the coaching program that I just finished up. The idea that most humans, as we start to get success, we actually sabotage ourselves.
Mm.
Have you ever read about this? Does that sound familiar to you? Because I know it's familiar to me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think it's a common theme. I've definitely seen it with my clients, even with myself,
Hmm.
um, where you find ways to make things harder for yourself. I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because it's like it. Because I know for me, the context is always like you have to work really hard, and like, oh, this is like it. Some days I'm like, is it really possible to have this much fun and actually create a meaningful living? And it's like I'm moving into the space now of um, it feels inevitable to me as well. Like my business is taking off, the podcast is taking off. It's like this shouldn't be this easy. Like this needs to be hard. Like how can I actually make this more difficult? Because otherwise, like there's no way. No, no, this has to be really difficult. And yeah, I just think yeah, I think it's the same thing for most of us who are really like driven, well educated people who have had success in other areas of our lives. Then we move into something that's new and different. Is yeah, just the whole idea of like it's all possible, it's all inevitable. And I want to thank you for that answer because I think I also really identify with that. I think I live in that kind of that same context. At least it feels that way now. I want to ask you to make a promise to me in front of the audience today. And will you make the promise to me without knowing what it is? Do you trust me enough?
I do. I will. I'll make this
Good, perfect.
promise.
All right. So when you're massive, will you come back on and do the show again?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yes. You all heard it here first. Like when you're like the next Mel Robbins or like whoever you decide you want to be, you're going to be yourself. But whatever you create in the world, when you and Jake are like have your own like television show, like you are both still going to come back on my show again. That's you heard it here
Definitely.
first, folks. Awesome. Thank you so much.
It's on the
All right.
record.
Yes, it's on. It is recorded for audio for all time and on the interwebs. So, got a time for a couple more questions. We're going to wrap this up here in a few minutes. Love to just get your general philosophy on life. Like, what I mean by that is like, how do you, what's the lens you view the world through? And like, how do you generally operate?
I think that, one of my biggest I like to think about it a little bit, part of it is philosophy, part of it is values, part of it is, you know, the experiential, build up that clouds your vision or colors your
Mhm,
vision, let's say.
mhm,
So one of my core values is comfort,
mhm.
um, and also humor. So I think that I try and integrate those things into as many aspects of my life as possible.
Yeah,
I consider myself a funny person, even if I'm the only one laughing at my own jokes.
I love
Um,
that.
I only wear comfortable shoes. It's very rare to find me in a pair of heels. And I also think it's really important to create environments where people feel comfortable, where I feel comfortable. Um, and that's not that I don't push myself out of my comfort zone or push others, but um, creating that psychological safety for people to do that and enter that space, I think is really important. And I definitely try to do that both, you know, at work, but even more so outside of work. Um,
Nice.
so I think that those are probably the two things that propel me the most in the way that
Hmm.
I approach things.
Yeah, I
If
love
it's
that.
not funny, it's not fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is where you and I are. So comfort is not one of my greatest commitments. So I call that your greatest commitments, and I have three, and it's to excellence, to connection, and to fun. So you and I
Mm,
actually share. To me, like fun, play, humor, it's all kind of the same. It's all in the same, obviously in the same realm. And when you view the lens through, what I heard for you is like, hey, like I'm going to be on a podcast today, or hey, I'm going to go and work with this corporate client, or does this new client, do I feel comfortable with them, and is there fun or is there humor in it? And like looking at everything that you do through that lens and knowing that that's like when you're showing up as your most empowered self is a very freeing thing that I never realized for myself until about 8 months ago. And now, like, I don't know how it goes for you, but when I look at all things like creating a podcast, do I see it as something that's excellence? And yes, it's always a work in progress and it's always getting better, hopefully. Does it
mm.
allow me to connect? Does it allow me to connect? And is it fun? And if it's all three, it's like, for me, if all three of those things are checked, I'm almost always a hell yes. Almost always. As long as there's obviously safety and financial concerns, but generally it's a hell yes. So I hear for you like comfort and humor. Like if you got those two things, you're probably shown up pretty powerfully.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
I like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. All right. So where can the audience find you? How can they connect with you and learn more about you and learn more about
Uh,
the company?
So they can follow me on Instagram, um, at Revel&Awe, or go to our website, revelandawe.com. They can also go to my personal website, ariellesadan.com, or check out my Instagram, Arielle Sadan _coach. So
Nice.
lots of different ways to get in touch with me. And I really look forward to being in touch with your community. It sounds like you've built something really wonderful so far, and I'm really
Yeah.
psyched to see how it continues to grow.
Yeah. And if I'm half kidding, if they want to find you on dating apps, I'm kidding. We won't go into that.
Just reach out to me on Instagram. It's
Yeah,
fine.
just DM her on Insta. She's like, just DM her on Instagram. She'll check out your profile. She'll look at the pictures of your food that you've taken and decide if it's a good match, and she'll let you know.
And just a warning that Jake also reads the Revel&Awe Instagram DMs. So make sure you're
Oh,
addressing it to
perfect.
the right person.
he would he would probably get quite the kick out of that. That would be hilarious.
He would. He would never let me live that down.
No.
So
That would create humor, which is what you're committed to. So that's perfect.
that's true.
Humor at your own expense. Well, I want to thank you for being on today. It was awesome to get to know you. Like I had mentioned at the beginning, we don't really know each other. I feel like I know quite a bit about you now. So thank you for coming on today and spending the time with us.
Thank you
I
for
would love
having
it.
me.
Yeah, I would love it if you would leave myself and the audience with some Arielle words of wisdom. And these words of wisdom should fit on an Instagram post, not the text part of the post, but the picture part of the post. Because I had a guest like get contentious with me like in a fun way about that. I'm like, no, the picture on Instagram or in a post-it note. So what words of wisdom do you have for us to leave us with today?
Oh my goodness. Being concise is not one of my strengths. Words of
Breakthrough.
wisdom. It's true. Um, I think being aware of your fear does not mean that you need um, to live into it.
I love that.
And yeah, so
That's
you
great.
can know that it's there and you don't have to give in.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. That's very wise, and I love that. I'm taking that for
I
myself
feel
too.
wise.
You are wise. I'm telling you. Not only do you feel wise, I am acknowledging you for your wisdom. Those are definitely words of wisdom
Well, make sure that you also include words of wisdom and wizardry because
and
apparently
wizardry. We
that
will
is something I
on
will
the
embrace as well.
on the show notes and on the marketing that we'll do for this episode. Wizardly will definitely be inside of all that. Well, I want to thank you one more time for being on today. It's been a delight, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other very soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with me, Jason Frizzell. Enjoyed today's episode? Please tell your friends, give us a shout out and a follow on Facebook and Instagram, and take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes. If something from this episode has piqued your interest and you'd like to connect about it, please email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners.